welcome to MapleWoodian.com podcast. We have on the phone Steve Forbes. How are you doing, Mr. Forbes?
Doing great, thank you.
Of course, Mr. Forbes has a long history, financial writing, publishing, former presidential candidate, and, of course, a longtime Jersey boy, so we're glad to see that. But you are going to be at Words Bookstore tonight, Thursday night, at 7:30 to sign copies of your book and discuss money, how the destruction of the dollar threatens the global economy, and what we can do about it. It's quite a premise.
Well, unfortunately, we live in a time where our policymakers, our authorities, seem to know less about money than their forebears did 100 years ago. And the idea that you can fool around with money, the government, trash money, and make it look like a roller coaster and have a functioning economy is just going to be, I think historians are going to look back and just scratch their heads in wonderment. What were these people thinking?
Now, one of the premises, and it's a very interesting read, is on the gold standard. You write, freeing the dollar from gold was supposed to make the United States stronger. Instead, it has made the country weaker. What is your view of the removal from the gold standard, which I believe was done under Nixon, correct?
That's right. We did it in the early 1970s. We'd been on a gold standard for 180 years, from the time of George Washington to the 1970s. And the thing about money, it's like anything else in the marketplace, fixed weights and measures. You know, when you go to a store and buy a pound of cheese, you assume it's 16 ounces. When you buy a gallon of gas, you assume it's a gallon. Those measurements don't float each day. You have 12 inches in a foot. That doesn't float. But the floating dollar since the early 1970s has hurt investment. So if we'd maintained the growth rates since the 1970s that we'd had for the previous 180 years of our country's history, the U.S. economy today would be 50% larger. Over time, when you don't get the investment you need, you pay a price for it in a lower standard of living than you'd have had otherwise.
And for the uninitiated who may not understand when they hear gold standard and the specifically, what is the impact it has? Maybe people don't realize.
Well, what a gold standard does, it makes sure that the dollar's value remains fixed. It doesn't fluctuate all over the place. And so just as you have 60 minutes an hour each day, the dollar would have a fixed measure of value vis-a-vis gold. Gold is sort of, in this case, like a ruler. Once upon a time, it was fixed at $35 an ounce. In the last 40 years, we've made a lot of blunders, so today you probably have to fix it at $1,100 or $1,200 an ounce. And all that would mean is if it went above that price, you'd create less money. If it went below that price, you'd create more money. It's like cruise control. What we do in this book is we strip away all the jargon and mathematical formulas that just confuse the issue. It's a very simple issue. When the dollar has a fixed value, we all come out ahead.
And when you talk about the gold standard, it is basically the amount of gold held in reserve bases what the money amount printed is allowed in circulation, correct? Or is that not true?
What we point out is that you don't really have to own a lot of gold at all. All you'd have to do is look at the price of gold. It's traded around the world. One of the things about gold that makes it useful as a value is that it's scarce but not too scarce. Every ounce that has been mined is still with us today. So if you have a gold ring, you may have grains in there going back to Pharaoh times in Egypt.
So it's basically set on the price of gold.
That's
sets
right.
The value of the currency. And how much do you think that has impacted today's problems, whether it's interest rates? I mean, interest rates are low, the stock market is high, unemployment is down. People might say, what is the problem that maybe they don't understand? Is it debt? I know people I know who are in the financial world always talk about debt.
When you have a weak economy, you end up with more debt. And weak currency, you end up with more debt. And in terms of today, I mean, we have this crisis, the panic of 2008, 2009. That was 6 years ago. And we've had the worst recovery from a sharp downturn, an economic downturn in American history. And even today, even though the unemployment rate goes down, what they call the labor participation rate in this country is back where it was in the late 1970s. So we're like a batting ball player who wins the batting crown hitting .250.
So that's the idea that fewer people are looking for work because they're discouraged, or
and or they say let's retire or go on disability, and so they in effect drop out. And you still have a lot of parents today who wonder when they're going to get the kids out of the basement. Maybe they hopefully get the kids out before the kids go on Social Security. So it's still a rocky economy, and the rest of the world, we're hitting 250, but the rest of the world is in terrible condition. China's in trouble, Japan's in recession, Europe's in recession, Brazil's in recession, Mexico's barely growing. So you have a few bright spots, but most of the world is pretty grim, and that's going to hurt us next year.
And again, we're talking to Steve Forbes. His book is Money, How the Destruction of the Dollar Threatens the Global Economy and What We Can Do About It. You can see him and hear him and read his book at Words Bookstore in Maplewood Village. You write that the weak, unstable money inflames perceptions of unfairness. People with fixed incomes struggling with rising prices in an uncertain economy become enraged when they see others appear to get rich through speculation or crony capitalism, not honest effort. That's an interesting point.
Chapter 5 of the book talks about how weak money debases society, that when people cease trusting money, they cease trusting each other. And we point out that countries that routinely trash their money have higher crime rates than those that have stable money, that when you have uncertain money, as we've had these years, social trust goes down. People don't feel they can get ahead through the old values of hard work. The link between effort and reward seems to be undermined. You see more cronyism, what they call crony capitalism. You get ahead by who you know, not by the value of the product or service you provide. And it's corrosive. People hurts morale in society.
And what is your view on the thought that, and I appreciate your time with us, the idea of the growing divide between rich and poor and the shrinking middle class? Is that a fair assessment? And does your book play into how to handle that
yes,
problem?
When you have unstable money, which means less people invest less in the future and more in hard assets today. What that does is means less growth, which means less mobility. It hurts people the most who have the least. And so that's why median incomes today are lower than they were 6 years ago, which is terrible in American history. Only in the 1930s did we do something like that. And and in this economy, upper income people have done relatively better than people in middle and lower incomes. And that hasn't happened much before in our history, and that's what you get with stagnation. So if you had a vibrant economy, people feeling that they can move ahead, they don't care if Bill Gates is rich. They just want to know that their opportunities are there. They only become envious or angry when they feel that the progress has stopped, that they're in a rut and they can't get out of it.
So what's the answer in terms of what the government can do and what the average person who might be reading your book can do?
What the reader can do is start pressuring their political representatives. Readers pressure our political representatives. Start boning up on this subject. Most of them are very ignorant of it, and
have a lot of other subjects.
Yeah, well,
we won't go there.
Let's go to the big ones first.
There you go.
But that can help. And the other thing is push for things like radical tax reform. If we put in a policy of a stable dollar, and we radically simplify the tax code for something like the flat tax, so we spend our time on productive things instead of this idiotic code, you would start to see this economy turn around very, very quickly. And I think we're starting to see, even though it's a mess right now, I think in 2 or 3 years you're going to start to see a real turnaround in healthcare where patients have more control. Big things are about to happen in the medical world, starting to happen. So the ingredients are there for this economy to take off like a rocket. We just got to get a few things right, and boom, we're going to save ourselves and save the world by showing how it can be done.
And again, for those who remember your presidential campaign, you were a big flat tax proponent. You still say that's an approach, or could there be just more simplifying without a flat tax?
Well, I think that just junking this code, which is millions of words now, nobody knows what's in it, including the IRS, just start over. Because if you try to deal with the code as it is, you'll just go back into the rut. Back in 1986, we simplified the code, got it down to 2 rates, but hardly was the ink dry on that, then Congress was back to its bad old stuff. So don't put the temptation there. The temptation's there. They will always give in to make it more complex. Why? Because complexity is a source of power in Washington.
And bureaucracy feeds on itself. I would imagine you'd agree with that. I appreciate your time. We'll let you go in a moment. You brought up health care. What is your take from a strictly financial view of Obamacare? And is it an approach that maybe do you agree with, or what would you do to change it or alter it? And do you think there'll be any changes?
Oh, they're going to be big changes.
Yeah.
It's been a disaster. In food, which is more basic than medical care. If you don't have food, you don't have anything. And we don't have the government running the farms in this country. The government is involved, but it doesn't run the farms. If it did, we'd have no more obesity. We'd all be starving. So you have agriculture produce the food, private sector deliver and sell the food, and if people have problems getting it, you have everything from food stamps to food banks to deal with it. I don't know why we can't do the same thing in health care. Have more entrepreneurship, have real patient control, and have effective safety nets instead of the hodgepodge system with reeking of uncertainty that we have today.
And again, we're talking to Steve Forbes. His book, Money, on sale now. You can meet and greet him at Words Bookstore. And any chance you might jump into the political candidate game again for president or something else?
I'm an agitator now. So I get my exercise on a treadmill or a biking machine, and I'll leave the political running to others. But I'll be full of advice and pressuring them to try to do the right things.
And we have to ask you one quick thing about, obviously, your father was Malcolm Forbes, who was a great pioneer in journalism and finance, and you were a Jersey boy, raised here. Tell people just your thoughts on what sort of you learned from him and from growing up in New Jersey, where you still live.
Well, New Jersey is one of those states that gets no respect, but is an extraordinary state, diverse in so many ways. People just think of the Turnpike or Newark Airport. As you know, there's so much more to it than that. And in terms of my father, one of the things I learned is, in addition to being curious and always look into the future, is precisely don't let the past hold you down. Always look ahead, because as he put it, your time on this earth is too short. This is not a dress rehearsal. You got to make the most of it with what you have.
Well, we appreciate you spending some of your time with us. Again, Steve Forbes. I'll be signing and meeting and greeting on his book, Money, how the destruction of the dollar threatens the global economy and what we can do about it, tonight at Words Bookstore in Maplewood Village. And we thank you for your time, sir.
Well, thank you, and look forward to seeing you later.
You too, sir.